This book, entitled 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote for Chaos, was conceptualized initially for the purpose of providing the readers with guidelines to follow in order to go through life as easily as possible. It works under the premise that life is not easy. It is imperfect and sometimes brutal and harsh, as it is an unending battle between order and chaos. This fact is the reason why the author thinks that every individual should set some guiding standards for themselves to follow in order to find the balance between knowing what to aim for the future and also have the courage and discipline to face the challenges of today. However, the guidelines written in this book were formulated not to be a panacea to all life's problems. This book is not intended to be your game plan to go through life chaos-free. In fact, the author recognizes the differences between each individual brought about by their differing upbringing and experiences. These guidelines, however, can be used by the readers as basis to make their own specific life principles, which are more suited to their own specific situations. What the author only aims to achieve is for his readers to understand the general concepts of order, chaos, truth, and the concept of being. By understanding these, every reader will hopefully be assisted to finding happiness and meaning in this life. In writing this book, the author tried to inject his personal experiences in trying to explain how the rules apply in real life. The annotations for every rule were both scientific and personal, which made this literary work relatable. The book started with a foreword written by the author's good friend Norman Deutsch. In his foreword, he narrated how he became friends with the author and how their friendship blossomed around conversations about random things. He then proceeded to explaining why it is normal for humans to question and ignore rules. However, while having this understanding, he posited that having a set of rules to follow is necessary in order to minimize chaos, both internally and externally. He introduced the literary work of his friend not as a straitjacket to be followed, but only as a guide intended to help the readers have more fulfilled lives. In the overture, the author narrated the history behind his work, both the long and the short versions. He shared that the idea of writing down rules of life started from his innocent answer to a question in a website. To his surprise, this answer became popular among the other members of said website. When he became a guest in a radio show years after, he was given the opportunity to talk again about said rules. This time, a wider audience got to listen to his thoughts. One of them was a literary agent. This literary agent was so intrigued by the author's ideas that after the program, she had more questions that needed answers. This motivated her to contact the author, and once they got in touch, she made him a proposal to write this book. At first, the author thought that this work would just be a short one. However, it turned out that the author had more to say about the topic, thus this book. The first rule in the author's book is stand up straight with your shoulders back. The author suggested that in order to overcome life's challenges, one must first gain confidence. We must believe that we are capable of overcoming whatever challenges that may come our way. By standing straight with shoulders back, we are showing the world that we are confident and competent. By this reason, other people will be led to regard us as winners. They will give us respect and regard us with esteem. When this happens, we will have already overcome the first level of resistance to our search for a more meaningful life. Second, the author suggested that we regard ourselves as someone we are responsible for helping. He explained that more than anything or anyone we value in this world, it is ourselves that we have to value the most. We have to regard ourselves as someone whose life has a purpose, and for the purpose to be achieved, we must take care of our physical, mental, and emotional selves. By realizing our roles in the fulfillment of the world's destiny, we will acknowledge that we are our best investments. Third, the author encourages us to make friends with people who want the best for us. He said that human beings are susceptible to influences, both bad and good, and it depends upon us on which influence we will allow ourselves to indulge in. This, however, may be controlled if we decide to surround ourselves with people who are genuinely concerned about our well-being. He said that true friends are those who will share both the good and bad times, and those who will be honest enough to reprimand us when we commit or are about to commit something that we cannot be proud of. By limiting our association with people who want the best for us, we can find that the journey towards reaching our goals in life becomes easier and more fulfilling. Fourth, the author suggested that instead of comparing ourselves with others, we must compare ourselves to who we were yesterday. In explaining this rule, he used as a premise the universal truth that someone will always be better than us. This does not mean, however, that we are of no value and our achievements have no purpose. This just means that in order for you to appreciate yourself more, you have to acknowledge that your efforts to be better are not put to waste as long as you have become better than the person you were yesterday. The author's fifth rule has something to do with the children. He suggested that in order to have a more meaningful life, we must not allow our children to do anything that will make us dislike them. We can do this by, first and foremost, realizing and acknowledging our roles in the lives of our children. We must understand that we are their parents, not just their friends. As parents, our children depend on us to know the difference between right and wrong and to have the courage to choose the former over the latter. To do this, parents must set ground rules for their children to follow. Parents must likewise be able to discipline their children without fear of being hated or despised by them. It is only through rewarding the good and punishing the bad that the children may know and understand that their actions have consequences, and it is up to them to choose whether to do well and enjoy the rewards or to do bad and suffer the punishments. Sixth, the author suggests that we set our house in perfect order before we criticize the world. In explaining this, the author averred that if everyone could just start to look into their own problems and think of ways on how to address them, rather than be intimidated by the more complex problems of the world, each individual will feel empowered. With their own personal problems addressed, the bigger problems of the world will just eventually follow. This is the ripple effect of change. One must start from one's own self. Seventh, the author teaches us to pursue what is meaningful rather than what is expedient. He teaches us that seeking pleasure rather than purpose is a shallow of living our lives. He emphasized that what is expedient is fleeting and will not make our lives worthwhile. However, though difficult, living one's life in search for meaning is noble and must be one's ultimate goal in life. Eighth, the author encourages us to tell the truth. He explained that lying, no matter how small or no matter how insignificant, could cause a lot of problems. It could cause the disintegration of the family and of the entire civilization. That is why he encourages everyone to tell the truth, as it is the only way that we can minimize chaos and optimize order in this world. Ninth, the author teaches us to listen. He is teaching us to accept that we still have a lot to learn in this life, and one way to learn is to engage in conversations with people who also have opinions on matters we are interested in. However, in order for a conversation to achieve this purpose, the participants must know how to listen effectively, and they can do this by accepting that the person they are speaking with knows something that they do not know. The author's 10th rule, on the other hand, talks about being precise in our speech. We have to be precise because it is only through this that we can be able to concoct a definite plan on how to go about life. If we know exactly what we want and where we want to go, we will be able to devise a plan that will give us exactly that. Otherwise, we will all end up wondering what we can do to make our lives better without having the motivation to actually do something about it. The 11th rule has something to do about how to rear our children. He suggests that we have to allow our children to be hurt and to commit failures and mistakes in order for them to be motivated to work hard until they reach their dreams. If we shelter our children from disappointment, we will breed youths who are afraid to take risks and are thus competent in nothing. Lastly, the author suggests that no matter how difficult life becomes, we must learn to appreciate the good things. We must be able to see life not as an unending process of hurts and sorrows, but as a journey also filled with miracles. Thus, he encourages us to, from time to time, stop and smell the flowers, enjoy the breeze, indulge children when they want to play, and pet a cat when we encounter one in the streets. Norman Deutsch started his foreword questioning humans' needs for more rules. He pointed out that since people develop differently from each other, why should we expect for certain rules to be helpful to the human race as a whole? He even pointed out that it is human nature for us to be ambivalent to rules, even if we know that these rules are for our own good. This is to emphasize that rules are unnecessary surplus of life. However, by telling the story of Moses and the Ten Commandments, Deutsch made a complete turn of opinion by stating that rules actually bring us freedom in such a way that we are diverted from being slaves of our passions. This Bible story also segued him into telling that Professor Peterson's book imparts rules that do not aim to limit man's free will, but aim to assist them into having fuller and freer lives. Deutsch shared that he met Professor Peterson through a common friend who held parties for the sole purpose of gathering people who loved to converse about any topic. One day, a friend brought Professor Peterson, and everyone in the party was awed by his enthusiasm and eloquence. He described Professor Peterson as an intelligent person who talks about subjects that matter. Everyone in the party loved listening to him talk because he was unassuming, likened to a child who learned something for the very first time. Because of this, Professor Peterson became his friend. After said party, they indulged each other into more conversations, which led him to admire Professor Peterson even more, not only as a psychologist, but as a person. He then made a connection between Professor Peterson's first book, called Maps of Meaning, and this recent work by saying that the latter is somehow an introduction to the former, making the former more palatable to readers. Both books, though, talk about why the rules enumerated in Professor Peterson's book can still find universal application, even though each person has a unique experience of life. Deutsch also echoed Professor Peterson's caution, also found in both books, against ideologies and ideologists by saying that these ideologies are often blinded by the ideologies they peddle, that they forget to settle their own personal issues first. This is the main reason why this book was written, the belief that before one can have a fuller and freer life, one must first take responsibility of one's own life, settle one's own chaos, and manage one's own household. This, though, is not an attempt to oversimplify human psychology and life as a whole, but an attempt to bolster the universal truth that before one can take bigger responsibilities, they must first be able to manage their own affairs. Deutsch did not fail to emphasize that. Deutsch ended his foreword by saying that the rules are sometimes too difficult to follow, and the goals to be achieved may seem to be too far to reach. However, he also said that by knowing the difficulty in attaining our ideals and still deciding to work for them, we find meaning in our lives. As controversial as how he started his foreword, he ended it by saying that whether we admit it or not, we all want to be judged. The book has two stories, the long and the short. The short story started when the author stumbled upon a website, Quora, wherein people can ask and answer questions about any topic. In said website, members can downvote or upvote an answer depending on whether they agree to the same or not. From when he started contributing to said website, the author's answers to several questions did not gain popularity. In fact, his most popular answer only got 133 upvotes. This, however, changed when he submitted an answer to the question, "What are the most valuable things everyone should know?" His answer consisted of serious and not so serious rules and maxims such as be grateful in spite of your suffering, do not do something you hate, do not hide things in the fog, which turned out to be relatable to many Quora members. This answer, in fact, garnered 120,000 views and 23,000 upvotes, which is very rare for a Quora member to get. This made the author realize that his random thoughts on the matter could actually resonate to an audience. Later, he would go back to this answer as he decided to write this book. The long story, on the other hand, has something to do with the concept of order and chaos forwarded by the author in his previous and only published book entitled Maps of Meaning, The Architecture of Belief. In said book, the author discussed and argued that the great myths and religious stories of the past do not talk about how the humans lived, but how they should live, and thus is more moral than descriptive. Further, he posits that the constituent element of the world is not the material thing, but order and chaos. He described order as a world that is predictable and wherein people follow socially accepted norms. Chaos, on the other hand, occurs when the unpredictable happens. These two concepts for the author are both the beginning and the end, and the path that transverse in between these concepts defines life. Life for him is a constant search for the balance between order and chaos. When he discussed this on a radio program, a literary agent was so engulfed by his discussion that he contacted the author and suggested that he write a book about this topic. The author, before agreeing, made a counter-suggestion that the literary agent should watch 4 of his lectures uploaded in his YouTube channel, just so they could have a clear idea on what topic he should write about. After the literary editor watched the videos, he suggested for the author to write a guide on how to live well. This reminded the author of the list he posted at the website Quora and how people positively responded to it. He then suggested that he would write short annotations for each rule, to which the agent agreed. It turned out, however, that he had so much more to say about the rules that the annotations turned out longer than they expected. This was probably due to the extensive reading and research he did to understand why people are willing to enter into conflict in order to forward their respective beliefs and identities, just like what was happening during wars. This is how this book came to be. The title, 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote for Chaos, was chosen for its simplicity. It readily conveys the idea that we, as an individual and as a human race, should follow certain rules, standards, and values in order to avoid too much order or too much chaos. The aim of life is to stay in the path found in the middle of order and chaos, and to stay there, these 12 rules could find application. Rule number 1. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. Lobsters are like humans, as they too need a place to call home. They need a place where they can be safe, especially during the times when they are most fragile. However, like in the world people live in, the best places are most likely already occupied. That is why when 2 or more people find a good place and discover that it is unoccupied, conflict will surely ensue. When this situation happens to lobsters, and the lobsters involved are of equal sizes, a combat will happen. Of course, the victor takes the place as theirs, while the loser retreats if still alive. When this happens, 2 chemicals, serotonin and dopamine, in both the lobster's neurons take center stage. Winning increases the ratio of the former over the latter. Since serotonin has an effect in postular flexion, the winning lobster naturally extends its appendages to look tall and dangerous, and this works as a caution to other lobsters that are planning to invade their territory. A lobster with high levels of serotonin looks confident and dangerous. Therefore, if a lobster has high levels of serotonin, they will most likely be able to maintain their home with very little to no resistance. This is true with humans as well. When a person slumps around and looks unsure of him or herself like a loser lobster, people will assign them to the lower strata. These are the people who oftentimes get bullied, abused, and are most likely poor and powerless. This will cause the brain to produce lesser serotonin, which will eventually result in an even unhappier life. However, when a person stands up tall with straight shoulders, people will deem them confident and dominant and will regard them as more powerful and thus must be respected. When you look defeated, people will regard you as a loser. However, if you stand tall and proud, people will see you and treat you as a winner. Remember that a person is not just a body, but also a spirit. Thus, standing tall with shoulders back is not just physical, it is also a recognition that you are ready for whatever life will throw at you. It is a sign that when the going gets tough, you will not scour in fear, but will face the challenges head on. By standing straight with shoulders back, you are accepting that this world and this life are not perfect, but even so, you are still ready to conquer the world. Sometimes, what is needed to survive life's challenges is the belief that these challenges can be overcome and that no sufferings last forever. From that, one can hopefully find genuine happiness in this chaotic, imperfect world, and this all starts from standing straight with shoulders back. Rule number 2. Treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. It is one of life's greatest mysteries why people care more about their pets than themselves. To be more specific, when a pet is sick, the owner will immediately take said pet to the veterinarian to have it diagnosed and given the care and medicines needed for it to go back to its healthy state. No matter the cost, the owner will willingly spend just to make sure that the pet will be fine. On the other hand, if the same owner goes down with a certain disease, he will go to the doctor and be given prescriptions as well. However, more often than not, the prescription will not be filled, or if filled, will not be taken in accordance with the orders of the physician. Some will even refuse to see a doctor as they see it as a waste of time and money. This leads to the very difficult conclusion that people tend to love their pet animals more than themselves. A horrible truth, but a truth nonetheless. This, however, is a misguided way of thinking. This thinking fails to consider that humans have a greater role to play in the unfolding of the world's destiny than animals. Humans have to be able to understand this role in order to be reminded that they have to take care of themselves as much as they would take care of things, people, and animals they value. One's obligation to take care of oneself is actually a moral duty because by starting from within, we will be able to stir the course of civilization to a path that is less chaotic and thus bring more benefits to the majority. Considering yourself as something that you have to take care of will thus come from the realization that you have a value in this world. Therefore, you have to have a futuristic perspective of your life and its impact to your immediate neighbors and the world as a whole. Finally, you have to decide where you want to be and what you want to do in order for you to direct your actions into accomplishing that goal. Having a goal will help you restructure your life, give it some semblance of order and meaning. With this sense of purpose and strengthened physical self, one can withstand any chaos that will come in the normal course of life. These all begin by treating yourself as someone you are responsible for helping. Rule number 3. Make friends with people who want the best for you. We choose the people we surround ourselves with, and we allow the influence we welcome into our lives. If we allowed negative people to pull us down into a black hole of misery, then that is where we are going to be. However, if we associate ourselves with people who are genuinely supportive of our well-being, then we can expect that they will readily help us to succeed. Some people think that it is selfish for a person to be selective of his friends, as some people just need salvation through the help of another. A good analogy of this is Jesus Christ himself, who befriended sinners so that their faith may be renewed and their souls be saved. However, it is worthy to note that Jesus was sent to earth to do just that. He was the Messiah, the Savior of the human race. We are not Jesus. We are ordinary persons who are susceptible to influences, may it be good or bad. Consider as an example a group of people tasked to achieve a certain goal. If all but one works their hardest to finish the task at hand, the most likely result is that the rest of the team will be discouraged rather than the idle one encouraged to do better. The other members will start to question why they are putting this much effort while the other one is not. This will motivate the others to not give their full effort as well, to the end that the goal will not be reached. This is how powerful bad influence is. However, if you limit your associations with people who share the same goals and aspirations in life, it will be certain that you will soar high together. You are in no obligation to maintain relations with a person that worsens your life, but you have a moral obligation to yourself to keep your well-being in mind. Keep friends who will share your happiness and sorrow. Surround yourself with people who will support you when you are doing something worthwhile, but will reprimand you when you are not. Through this, you will be led to a better path of life rather than allowing you to trudge the wrong one. Your search for a better, more meaningful and fulfilled life will be easier if you make friends with people who want the best for you. Rule 4. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. If we live in a microcosm of our world today where people are few and each member plays a vital role in the community, each member will feel important and that they matter. In this perfect situation, every member will have higher levels of serotonin and will thus walk around with the confidence of a winner. In this setup, nobody has to compare himself to another as each is good at what they do. Sadly, this is not our reality today. At present, through the proliferation of the Internet, it is not only to our community that we compare ourselves with, but to the rest of the world as well. This results in a problem because in this world of more than 7 billion people, there will always be someone better than us. If the realization that we are always inferior to others dawns on us every single day of our lives, then our sense of self-worth will go down the drain like all our little victories that will not matter because someone made an even bigger achievement. The end result of this is profound unhappiness. This mindset, however, can be changed if we avoid making other people's lives as the standard of our being. That is a tough game to win because, again, someone will always be better than us. Instead, you can put more value on your achievements in life by making your standards more personal. You can start this by asking yourself 3 questions. What is it that is bothering me? Is that something I can fix? And am I actually willing to fix it? If your answers to the foregoing questions are in the negative, then aim lower until you find something that you are willing to do something about and do it. Small as it may seem, once you accomplish that will be enough of victory for the day. That one small victory, however, will signify that you have become a better person than you were yesterday. From these small improvements will come your motivation to, little by little, improve your being and be a better person, not in comparison to the other 7 billion people in the world, but in comparison to the person you were yesterday. Rule 5. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Children are born in this world all innocent and good. However, children cannot be caged in forever as socialization is part of growing up. Unfortunately, once these children are exposed to the world, they are subjected to 2 kinds of influences, the good and the bad. They are therefore highly dependent on their main persons, their parents, to be able to identify wrong from right and to be able to discern which of the 2 they want to follow. This emphasizes how important parents' role are in the lives of children, as without proper guidance and encouragement, these children will be left preys to the temperaments of the world, which more often than not leads these children to go astray. Children can be damaged if there is too much order or too much chaos in their lives. Too much attention or a complete lack of it has the same end result. Too much socialization and a complete lack of it work the same way. It is, therefore, their parents' job to find the balance between the 2 in order for the children to likewise have a balanced upbringing. To do this, parents must first and foremost realize that they are not their children's friends. Most parents have a misplaced fear that if they impose rules upon their children and inflict punishments if their children do something out of line, their children will grow up hating them. This is an incorrect way of looking at one's role as a parent. In fact, it will be for the children's greater benefit if they have people in their lives who set standards and impose rules. It is through this that they will be able to structure their lives fully conscious of consequences and responsibilities. However, in order for parents to find balance between too much intervention in their children's lives and a complete lack of it, they can follow these simple disciplinary principles. First, parents should know how to limit the rules. Parents must not burden their children with too many rules, as this will surely result in frustration. In giving rules, parents can prioritize what is more important and immediately necessary. Second, parents must learn to use minimum necessary force. They can do this by observing how their children react to disciplinary intervention. If they quickly respond to a single stare, then that is enough of a disciplinary action. If not, then you gradually increase the level of intervention until you find what's effective for them. Third, parents must understand that raising a child is not an easy feat. Therefore, parenting must be a partnership between both parents and not a lone endeavor of one of them. This is not intended to downgrade the efforts of single parents, however. This is just a general concept that encourages couples to support each other as parents. Fourth, parents should understand their own capacity to be harsh, vengeful, arrogant, resentful, angry, and deceitful, so that when they are to be pushed to their limits, they will not take it out on their children. By recognizing their limits, they will be able to plan and have better solutions to extreme disciplinary challenges rather than hating their children altogether. Lastly, and most importantly, parents must recognize that it is their primary duty to prepare their children for the world. To do this, they must stand as the world's proxy, embodying both the good and the bad aspects of it. These clear disciplinary principles and approaches produce well-adjusted children, happier families, and progressive societies. Rule 6. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. The world today is beset with various problems, some bigger than what an ordinary citizen can comprehend. In the past, a number of people tried to consider these problems as their own and decided to take on the responsibility of finding and executing a solution. One great example of this are the Nazis, who considered Jewish people a problem and decided that killing them was the solution to this problem. However, we all know how this resulted in a war, the effects of which we still suffer to the present days. These people, in trying to solve world problems all by themselves, failed to recognize that these problems could not have any immediate solutions. These problems are so complicated and intertwined with each other that an instant, one-for-all solution will make no effect, but actually even worse than the same. This is not a reason, however, not to aim for a better world or a better life. While it is true that one cannot solve all the world's problems by themselves, they are, however, capable of doing smaller acts and solving smaller problems, the collective effort of which is not any less significant. Instead of feeling frustrated about how problematic our world is, look inward and start with your own life. How is your relationship with your family? How are you performing at work? How is your relationship with your friends? If in answering these questions you recognize some problem areas, you can begin by taking note of these problems and finding time to process how you can address these issues one by one. Once you have decided to do something about it, the next thing you should do is gather courage and do what it takes to solve the problem. Likewise, if you see something you are doing that causes these problems, decide to stop doing it. You will later realize how better your life has become by targeting your own problems first, rather than be intimidated by the problems of the world. If this thought process is done not only by you, but by all the people in the world, the resulting effect of this will be magnanimous. One by one, the world's concerns will decrease in number until slowly order reigns over chaos. This is a simple example of how a small ripple of change can become a big wave of improvement if all these ripples are directed to one common goal, and that is to make this world a better place to live in for everyone. Rule 7. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. If there is one thing that everyone can agree on, is the fact that life is not easy. Life is complicated and sometimes even cruel and harsh. For the most part, life is an unending struggle, a daily and sometimes hopeless endeavor to exist and coexist. This is probably the reason why, when given the choice between pleasure and purpose, people tend to choose the former. In their minds, life as it is already difficult, and a little pleasure from time to time is something they deserve. The problem about choosing pleasure, however, is that it is addictive, and in this world of so much sorrow, pleasure is a vice that is very difficult to say no to. This, however, is a shallow way of going through life. At the end of the day, expedience is fleeting. The benefits of expediency last only for a moment, and you will eventually realize that it did no significant good to your life. Therefore, one must not yearn only for pleasure and expediency, but for something greater and more meaningful. Meaningful gives you purpose, it gives you a sense of value, and reaffirms the reasons why you are alive in the first place. The sad thing about pursuing a meaningful life, however, is that it is not easy. It is something that only courageous people can even aim to achieve. If expedience is the easy road, search for meaning is the long, winding, thorny, and even deadly one. This is probably the reason why only a few decide to let go of easy pleasures in search of meaning. Nevertheless, the search for meaning, though challenging, will eventually prove to be most rewarding. Once achieved, everything, including all the hardship and trials that have come before, will make sense, and life will not be a monotonous, difficult journey, but a voyage to something that only gets better and better. Finding meaning in this life is finding the balance between order and chaos, which, if achieved, will enhance the being into more than just a disposable realization of a concept. It is for this reason that people should learn to focus more on pursuing meaning in this life rather than lament on the misfortunes they experience. If they shift their focus on the ultimate goal of life, they will be able to deflect from the temptation of what is temporarily pleasurable or what is expedient at the moment. Instead, they will persist through the challenges and pursue a higher purpose until a meaningful life is achieved. Rule 8. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Truth is something that everybody wants and expects, but not everyone is capable of giving. In fact, telling the truth proves to be very difficult, especially in this time and age where people are afraid of responsibilities and shy away from the consequences of their actions. Telling the truth and lying are not just two choices of action, but two choices of paths to lead in life. Yet again, people choose the easier path without realizing the greater repercussions of their actions. Sometimes people think that lying will not hurt anybody. Sometimes they even use a noble end to justify lying. If we go back in history, this kind of mindset is what started wars. What they did not know is that lying cultivates resentment and revenge that eventually blossom into bigger societal problems like crimes and corruption. A lie, no matter how small we think it is, can actually cause a damage so catastrophic that no amount of truth can repair. It is like a parasite that eats on the very foundation of society that, if allowed to proliferate, can cause the downfall of a civilization. In fact, at present, lying can be considered to be the world's greatest threat. Truth, on the other hand, is the opposite. Truth rebuilds, nurtures, and cultivates. Truth reforms even the hardest hearts into believing that there is more in this life than suffering and sorrow. Truth makes people's lives easier, brings families closer, makes communities more peaceful and safe, and countries more tolerant of each other. It has the power to heal wounds of division, bridge differences, mend broken relationships, and bring light even to the darkest parts of the world. What is even more beautiful about truth is that it worries not about the opinion of others, as it is subject to one's own perspective and based on one's own personal experiences. Two individuals have two different truths, but if there is respect, the difference will not matter. Truth is not judged by who is telling it or how it is being told, because nothing affects the intrinsic value of truth. It is the ultimate end in itself. It is beyond any judgments in this world. This is the reason why truth is considered as a panacea to all of the world's problems, because, as promised in the Holy Word, Truth sets you free. If you find yourself in a messy situation, or you have a problem that you cannot seem to solve or challenge that you cannot seem to overcome, try telling the truth. If you have relationships that are starting to crumble or personal connections that are slowly disintegrating, stop lying and tell the truth. Only by telling the truth, you may find peace in this life. Rule 9. Assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. People engage in conversations for various reasons. However, the ultimate purpose of conversations is the exchange of ideas that the participants will end up knowing more than what they know before. This process is composed of two vital actions: speaking and listening. Between the two, however, the latter is the more challenging task. Probably, people are wired in such a way that they can automatically speak about what they think rather than listen to others talk about theirs. In order, however, for a conversation to produce its intended result, the participant must be willing not only to share their thoughts, but to attentively listen to those shared by the other party. There must be reciprocity. Participants must join a conversation to ultimately solve a problem together rather than monopolize the discussion with their own personal positions. One must join a conversation expecting to learn something from the other participant. This way, they will not be tempted to take all the talking and none of the listening. The next vital question to ask is, how should one listen? According to Charles Rogers, a psychotherapist, the first requirement for listening is courage. Courage to accept that at the end of a conversation, there is a possibility that you will be a changed person. Those people who do not have the courage are those who are not willing to learn from the person they are talking with, are not good listeners, and thus cannot be good conversationalists as well. In addition, Rogers suggests that in order for one to be an effective listener, they must be able to summarize what the other party talked about before he could start talking about their own opinions on the subject matter. This process of summarizing has many advantages. The first and most obvious advantage is that summarizing will help you truly understand what the other person is talking about. Second, summarizing helps one to optimize the use of their memory. Not only does this help you remember, it strings the information that only what you find helpful will remain. Lastly, summarizing helps you to more effectively form your own opinion on the matter. Sometimes, by summarizing, you will realize that what the other party is saying is right. If you still think that they are mistaken, you can concisely refute their arguments. If the person you are talking to is also a good listener, they might learn something new from you too. Great conversationalists are those who do not think they already know everything. They are those who are aware that their knowledge is insufficient and thus must be augmented by those who also have an opinion on the matter. A good conversation, on the other hand, is that whose purpose is the search for the truth. It is one where all the parties are genuinely talking and listening to each other. It is one where all the parties share a single purpose on why they entered into a conversation in the first place, and that is the unending search for knowledge. Rule 10. Be precise in your speech. Precision is the opposite of imagination. Precision is specific, while imagination can be anything, anywhere, or anyone. Life is a continuous battle between precision and imagination, and sometimes it is difficult to differentiate between the two. However, if we work on the premise that life is complicated, being precise could simplify it for us. Take, for example, sickness. When you wake up in the morning feeling an excruciating pain, your imagination starts to wander. Could the pain be caused by a serious disease? Could you be dying? Could it be just last night's tuna sandwich? If you allow your imagination to control the processing of this specific event in your life, it could be anything, and you will get stuck wondering what you should do. However, if you visit a doctor and allow them to diagnose you, you will be told precisely what caused the pain. If it was caused by a serious disease, the next thing the doctor will tell you are your options for medication. If it was not caused by a serious disease, you will be sent home and be advised to take some rest. In both scenarios, however, you will know exactly what you can do to confront the problem. This is how one should look at life to make it less complicated than it already is. People should learn to choose precision rather than wallow in their own imaginary perceptions. People should learn to confront reality, no matter how scary one's reality has become, because it is the only way that one can go through with life. Fear of the unknown becomes an unconfronted reality. An unconfronted reality is like a snowball that gets bigger and bigger as it cascades down the hill until nothing or nobody can stop the wreckage it will bring. However, when you confront the problem while it is as small as your fingertips, you will find that it is a lot easier to deal with. You just have to take courage to see it as it is and decide that you have to do something about it, and decide further how you will do something about it. To confront life as it comes entails knowing what exactly you want to have and where exactly you want it to be. By knowing precisely your goals in life, you will have a clear plan on how to achieve them. You have to target a precise destination so you'll know exactly the direction you have to take to get there. Otherwise, you will find yourself going in circles until you realize that despite the time and effort you exerted, you have gone nowhere. This will surely lead to frustrations and disappointments, which are the main building blocks to an unhappy life. So, be precise in everything. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Simplify your life by confronting your reality. Shying away from your monsters will only make them bigger and unconquerable. Instead, give your fears names and look them straight in the eyes. It is only through that you may move forward to give meaning to your existence. Rule 11. Do not bother children when they are skateboarding. Humans are natural daredevils. When things become too easy for them, they find a way to make it more challenging. Even kids have this mindset. This is probably the reason why playgrounds must not be too safe for children, lest it becomes boring. When it does, children tend to find ways to make it a little more dangerous, like sliding head first, swinging standing up, or just any other ways to make the experience more exciting. This is also true in other activities like skateboarding. Once skateboarders familiarize themselves with the basics, they look for more difficult ways to do it, like skating down the rails of the stairs, skating without safety gears, etc. They do this not because they seek the rush of doing something dangerous, but because they seek competence, and competence can only be had after repeating an act over and over again. At first, these skateboarders will fall flat on their backs or on their faces and will sustain minor and major injuries. However, these will not stop them. Instead, these injuries and accidents will toughen them up and motivate them to be better at their skill. This is an important lesson that we have to teach our children. We have to encourage them to have persistence in everything they do. They have to learn that mastery and competence does not come easy, as it can be had only after years of practice and hard work. We also have to teach them not to give up when times get tough. We must teach them to treat failures as motivation to be better and to try even harder until the goal is met. We must teach them to toughen up because life will throw many challenges at them, and at the end of the day, it is only themselves who they can trust to overcome all these. The goal is not to raise strong children so that they can take advantage of this strength and trample upon other people. Although humans have this tendency, this is not the normal course of things. The goal is to raise strong children who are not only physically able, but likewise mentally balanced and mature, so that they can use this strength for their betterment and welfare. Weak men are actually more dangerous than the strong ones, as they perceive life in a different manner. They see the world as a place of misery and put the blame on others. This faulty thought process, most often than not, leads these children to commit acts against their neighbors. However, if children are strong, physically, mentally, and emotionally, this will not only benefit themselves, but all the people around them. That is why we must not shelter our children from the world as they grow up. Allow them to explore, be hurt, fail, and make mistakes. It is only through this that they can learn how to survive life and all its accompanying challenges. It is only through this that they can optimize living to the end that they can find meaning to their existence. Rule 12. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. Why is life imperfect? Why should there be sufferings, diseases, and failures? These questions have been asked by all of us at some point in our lives, especially when we are faced with a problem so ginormous that hope is too intangible a concept to believe that the sufferings will eventually end. In fact, if there is one belief that all peoples of the world can agree on, is that life is difficult and all of us struggle to survive life one problem at a time. The question on why life is not perfect can, however, be answered by reflecting on the life of Superman. Superman is the perfect epitome of an individual with a perfect life. He can do anything and everything and survive any challenge. However, his makers soon realized that they made Superman too perfect when they found themselves in a quandary as to how to keep Superman interesting to the viewers. They arrived at a point where they could no longer improve on the character. This is why they decided to introduce Superman's weakness, the kryptonite. By introducing Superman not as the perfect superhero that he was, his makers were able to improve on his character, which extended his popularity until today. This is the purpose of limitations. This is the reason why life cannot be perfect, because if it is, the human race would be stuck at a point without any motivation to be better. Limitations are needed to evolve, and without evolution, life would lose its meaning and purpose. Once you understand this, you will realize that sufferings in life are fleeting. It comes and it goes like the sun goes up in the morning and goes down when evening comes. You will also realize that all problems have solutions, and these solutions will eventually be reached as long as you keep endeavoring to find it. However, in addition to accepting that life is not perfect, you should also see that life is filled with beautiful things. In your worst of days, if you just opened your eyes to see life's wonders, you would be reminded that this life is not all difficulties and challenges. It has a certain calm, reassuring radiance that amidst all the difficulties, you can still enjoy life as it comes. So while you face your daily battles in life, stop to admire the sunrise, smell the flowers, feel the breeze, look at children as they play, and pet a cat when you encounter one in the street. God promised us in the Bible that if we ask, whatever we ask for shall be given to us. If we seek, whatever we are searching for we shall find. And if we knock, the door will be opened to us. This is His way of telling us that if we have faith and we pray, He will listen and answer our prayers. If this is true, however, why is there still suffering in this world? Why are there diseases and deaths? Why are there so many unanswered prayers? Maybe we are asking the wrong questions. Maybe we are looking for the wrong things. Maybe we are knocking at the wrong doors. Maybe instead of praying for what we think we lack, we should pray and search for the truth. This search for truth is likewise the author's motivation whenever he gets in an argument with his wife. While it is tempting to argue and win, what they would do as a couple is to separate some time to think of what they think they did wrong. Once they truly have an answer to this question, they would go back and try to resolve the conflict in a non-aggressive manner. This process helps them calm down to think clearly whether they want to win the argument or have peace instead. That was the author's thought process while contemplating on what he should do with his new pen light. This pen light was given to him by a friend. He was deeply amazed by this pen light as it made it possible for him to write even in darkness. After much contemplation, he decided to write the words he wanted inscribed in his soul. He started by asking himself the hardest question. He asked himself, "What shall I do tomorrow?" The answer that came was, "The most good possible in the shortest amount of time." The second question he asked was, "What shall I do next year?" To which he answered, "Try to ensure that the good I do then will be exceeded only by the good I do the year after that." Ultimately, these two questions led to the final question of, "What shall I do with my life?" The answer given to that was, aim for paradise and concentrate on today. On this last answer, the author elaborated that in this life, we have to have a goal and set our eyes to reach that goal. However, as we live our daily lives, we have to concern ourselves with our every moment. We have to aim for heaven while we toil here on earth. The next set of questions the author asked himself is related to his relationships. He asked, "What shall I do with my wife? What shall I do with my daughter? What shall I do with my parents? What shall I do with my son?" To these questions, he answered respectively, treat her as if she was the Holy Mother of God. Guide her and let her know it is okay if she wants to be a mother. Act in a way that your actions will justify their sufferings and encourage him to be a true son of God. The author did not stop at that. He continued asking questions, but this time he involved the bigger picture around him. He asked, "What shall I do with a stranger?" To which he answered, "Invite him into my house and treat him as a brother." "What shall I do with a fallen soul?" Offer a genuine but cautious hand. "What shall I do with the world?" Conduct myself as if being is more valuable than non-being. "How shall I educate my people?" Share with them those things I regard as most important. "What shall I do with a torn nation?" Stitch it back together with truth. "What shall I do for God?" Sacrifice everything I hold dear to yet greater perfection. The next set of questions the author asked himself has a direct relation to the rules he wrote in this book. What shall I do when I despise what I have? Remember those who have nothing and strive to be grateful. What shall I do when greed consumes me? Remember that it is truly better to give than to receive. What shall I do when my enemy succeeds? Aim a little higher and be grateful for the lesson. What shall I do when I am tired and impatient? Gratefully accept a helping hand. What shall I do with the fact of aging? Replace the potential of my youth with the accomplishments of my maturity. What shall I do in the next dire moment? Focus my attention with the next right move. The last set of questions the author asked himself is intended to further enlighten the readers about the rules he wrote in this book and the reason behind these rules. He asked, "What shall I do to strengthen my spirit? Do not tell lies or do what you despise. What shall I do to ennoble my body? Use it only in the service of my soul. What shall I do with the most difficult questions? Consider them the gateway to the path of life. What shall I do with the poor man's plight? Strive through the right example to lift his broken spirit. What shall I do when the great crowd beckons? Stand tall and utter my broken truths." With all these answers to the most difficult questions and the contents of this book, the author is hopeful that he was able to assist his readers in restructuring their lives to the end that they may all find meaning in this life. This life is a constant battle between order and chaos, and an individual's ultimate goal in this life is to find the balance between the two. Finding the balance between chaos and order is the goal because in extreme dosage, order and chaos can lead to the same end result, which is an unfulfilled life. By finding balance between order and chaos is not to say that life will be easy, but rather to make it bearable. Challenges will still be there. Life will still be imperfect. In this line, one cannot help but question why should life be difficult? Why can't everyone be happy and contented? Why should there be problems and challenges along the way? Why can't people learn to live in peace and harmony, or at the very least, tolerance? The answer to that is evolution. Without limitations, humans would not be motivated to be better. They would be stuck in mediocrity and would eventually wallow into the sadness that an unfulfilled life causes. However, if there are challenges, humans will continue to strive to improve. Human race will continue to evolve. It is for this purpose that this work was made. This book was conceptualized and eventually written in order to encourage people to be more contemplative of their lives. This is to give them motivation to endeavor to find meaning and purpose rather than go day by day living like there is nothing more in this world than pain and suffering. This is to encourage them to live rather than to merely exist. The rules as written by the author in this book are based not only on his own personal experiences, but also on the various researches and works done by experts who contemplated on the same topics. The author also quoted the Bible several times in this book. This work is therefore both objective and subjective, scientific and spiritual. This dichotomy is also an assurance that although some readers might not agree with some of the rules written in this book, the findings herein are universal and can find application in their lives in one way or another. If a reader cannot apply a rule squarely to his life, he can use said rule as a guide to formulate his own standards of living. If we go through the rules one by one, it has a central purpose, and that is to assist the individual to find meaning in this life. The search for life's meaning is difficult, but not impossible. It can be achieved, and these rules can be used as stepping stones to get there.